Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the quiet town of Willow Creek, where white picket fences framed lush green lawns, and the air was thick with the scent of blooming wildflowers, the stillness often masked the darkness lurking beneath. There was a certain charm in the simplicity of life here, but on the fateful morning of September 12, 2018, that charm shattered in an instant. It was just after dawn when the soft rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The local sheriff's department received a 911 call that would ignite a series of events no one in this close-knit community could have predicted. An unusual report: a body discovered in a remote area near Birchwood Park sent shockwaves through Willow Creek. Investigators arrived at the scene, their hearts heavy with the foreboding silence surrounding them. In the clearing, partially concealed by a tangled bed of ferns, lay the lifeless form of Anna Caldwell, a beloved school teacher known for her kindness and dedication to her students. The news spread like wildfire, engulfing the town in a veil of unease. There seemed to be a sense of disbelief. How could someone so cherished meet such a tragic end? Desperate questions filled the air, each one heavier than the last. Who would want to harm Anna? And why? Well, local law enforcement quickly set to work, combing through the sparse evidence, piecing together a puzzle that, at first glance, appeared impossibly complex. As daylight faded into a hazy twilight, the gravity of the investigation began to settle in. In a town where everyone knew each other, someone among them held a secret and unsettling connection to the crime that would alter the lives of many forever. The victim, Anna Caldwell, was more than a name in the community. She was a beacon of hope, a nurturing presence in the lives of the children she taught at Willow Creek Elementary. Born and raised in the town, Anna had deep roots, her family history interwoven with the fabric of Willow Creek. Her parents operated the local general store, where the laughter of children and the chatter of neighbors formed the backdrop of her childhood. At the time of her death, Anna was 35 and had spent over a decade shaping young minds, her passion for education evident in her infectious enthusiasm. She often organized extracurricular activities, from science fairs to seasonal plays, ensuring every child felt seen and valued. Those who knew her described her as the type of teacher who'd stay after school to help struggling students, offering both academic support and a listening ear. Anna's life was not devoid of challenges. Recently, she had experienced the heartbreak of a recent breakup, a relationship that had left her emotionally distant. Though she rarely spoke. Many friends noted subtle changes in her demeanorless laughter during gatherings, a slight pallor under her bright eyes. Yet, Anna remained devoted to her students, masking her struggles behind a warm smile. As investigators started to delve deeper into her life, they uncovered a mosaic of relationships, friends from childhood, colleagues, and a few that had ended in turbulence. Each interview painted a different picture of Anna, the girl next door and the flawed human beneath the surface. There were whispers of an admirer, someone noticed, but never fully acknowledged. And as the layers of her life began to unfurl, it became clear that Anna's life was more complex than her sunny exterior suggested. With each revelation, the sense of loss felt heavier. Who would want to harm someone so integral to the community? Those grappling with Anna's sudden absence began to realize that they had only scratched the surface of the life she led, a life that led to an untimely end. The darker threads of her story were now beginning to unravel, pulling tighter around the small town that would soon find itself at the center of a mystery. The crime scene. The early morning sun cast long shadows over Birchwood Park, illuminating the scene where Anna Caldwell's body lay a stark contrast to the serenity of the surrounding wood. Law enforcement cordoned off the area, their breaths visible in the cool September air. The officers moved methodically, aware of the gravity of their task. Evidence was fragile. Every footprint, every fallen leaf could be a clue or a distraction. Anna was positioned on her back, her pale skin contrasting sharply against the rich brown of the earth. A light sweater hugged her frame, a stark reminder how ordinary she had once been. The detective on the scene, Sarah Jensen, knelt beside Anna, noting the absence of a struggle and no visible signs of her fight for survival. The gentle rustle of leaves whispered through the trees, almost eerily, as if nature itself had paused to pay respect. Anna's belongings were examined with care. In her hand, clutched tightly, was a torn piece of paper, partially discolored. You're not for it to be retrieved. Just a pocket note or something more significant? It was a question lingering in her mind as she took in the surroundings. Frantically, investigators scoured the area for additional evidence. They noted a series of broken branches leading away from the scene. Perhaps Anna had taken a shortcut through the woods after meeting someone. Or maybe she had been followed. Footprints, partially obscured but fresh enough to analyze, formed a path that hinted at someone else being there. The sun continued its ascent, illuminating clues, but also casting doubt among the investigators. Each item collected, each detail logged, felt like a breadcrumb leading them deeper into the darkness that overshadowed the town. As the scene began to clear, the weight of what had happened pressed down hard. This was no random act. Someone wanted Anna gone. In the hearts of Willow Creek's residents, a slow-burning fear ignited. This was not just about Anna Caldwell, the teacher. It was now about the betrayal of trust that rippled through their lives. The idyllic picture of their town crumbled piece by piece, replaced by paranoia and suspicion. Detective Jensen stood for just a moment longer, absorbing the gravity of what lay before her. The investigation had begun, but the sense of urgency to find answers only grew more pressing. The early investigation. In the days following Anna Caldwell's death, the quietude of Willow Creek was replaced by a cacophony of speculation and anxiety. Detectives responded to the pressure swirling around the case while grappling with the complexities of a town suddenly on edge. As they set up their makeshift office in the local police station, their first steps were to gather information every scrap of context about Anna's life could hold the key to her murder. Interviews began immediately, starting with Anna's closest friends and colleagues. Brenda, Anna's fellow teacher, was visibly shaken when she sat down with Detective Jensen. Tears stained her face as she recalled the last time she saw Anna, a casual lunch at a nearby cafe just days before her death. "She seemed fine, you know, just a bit different," Brenda murmured, her voice trailing off as she struggled to piece together the signs she might have missed. They discussed everything from work affairs to potential biodrama, but nothing stood out as sinister. Meanwhile, the forensic team sifted through the items retrieved from the crime scene. The pocket note, hastily torn and marked with a strange symbol, bore a mix of nonsensical words and half-formed phrases. It felt cryptic, a riddle that needed unraveling. If Anna had been trying to communicate something important, the detectives needed to decode the message. As the investigation unfolded, a broader pattern began to emerge. Police interviews with Anna's pupils revealed whispers of an admirer, Samion, a bit older, a former student who had recently returned to Willow Creek. The name Ethan Marks surfaced frequently. He was remembered as quiet but brilliant, with a flair for poetry that had captivated Anna years ago. Friends spoke of a rekindled connection. An innocent exchange of messages was it merely admiration? Or could it have blossomed into something darker? While the narrative began to form, warnings echoed in the small-town chatterfingers, pointed sharply among those who walked the same tight community circle. Trust eroded quickly as whispers turned into accusations, and beneath the surface, friendships frayed under the weight of suspicion. Willow Creek was no longer simply mourning. It was at the precipice of uncovering secrets that some preferred to keep buried. Detective Jensen felt the urgency swell with every passing hour. The truth was hiding in plain sight, but time was running out. The dead ends. As the days turned into weeks, the initial flurry of investigative zeal began to wane. Detective Sarah Jensen and her team pushed through the fog of uncertainty, but they often found themselves veering off course, each lead like a mirage that vanished just as they reached it. The interviews with Anna's friends and colleagues provided glimpses into her life, yet they often felt more like evasive maneuvers than genuine revelations. Even Brenda, who had been so close to Anna, offered little more than vague theories when pressed about Ethan Marks. He was just a little obsessed, maybe, she said, shifting nervously in her chair. But it was harmless a phase. The team was beginning to question the reliability of their sources. Was everyone around Anna truly unaware of deeper undercurrents? Ethan, the so-called admirer, turned out to be a ghost of a suspect. It was discovered he had left town abruptly just days before Anna's death, a move that ignited alarms but fizzled into disappointment when local law enforcement confirmed he had returned to college out of state. No connection to the scene could be established, and he soon vanished from their inquiries completely. Meanwhile, forensic evidence proved even less revealing. The footprints discovered near Birchwood Park did not match any known suspects, and DNA collected from the torn note led nowhere. "We're dealing with an unknown," Jensen sighed during a team meeting, her frustration palpable. It felt like every theoretical thread ended in frustration, leading to more questions than answers. The investigation was mired in a swamp of conflicting information. Rumors circulated amongst the townsfolk. Some speculated Anna was involved romantically with another teacher, while others hinted at sordid affairs with parents. Paranoia turned neighbor against neighbor, and fingers began to point in every direction. The once close-knit community now echoed with distrust, each individual shrouded in suspicion. As the investigation hit these seemingly insurmountable dead ends, Detective Jensen felt the weight on her shoulders growing heavier. The truth, elusive as it was, felt more pressing with each unsatisfying lid. The worry gnawed at her. Willow Creek could either succumb to darkness or find a path toward healing. But first, they needed to unravel the truth behind Anna's tragic fate. Desperation crept into the air, thickening the atmosphere. The longer answers eluded them, the deeper the divide within the community became. A break in the case. One unremarkable Thursday morning, as the scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the thin walls of the Willow Creek police station, Detective Sarah Jensen was sifting through case files once more. After weeks of dead ends, frustration had settled like a weight in her gut. Then, unexpectedly, the ringing phone shattered the stillness, piercing through the veil of doubt that had enveloped the department. "Detective Jensen," a voice crackled through the receiver, tinged with urgency. It was Officer Mark Jacobs, managing the outlying evidence lab. "You need to come down here right away. You're going to want to see this." Jensen's heart quickened as she left her desk and made her way to the lab, each step laced with the hope that something, anything, might have surfaced. The small room was cluttered with files, but there was a focused intensity in Jacobs' eyes as he turned towards her. "Remember that note found at the crime scene?" He handed her an evidence bag containing the faded piece of paper, its creases sharply defined against the stark white of the bag. "I've been analyzing the ink. It's not just any ink, it's a specialty mix that's usually sold in local art supply stores." As he continued, Jensen leaned closer, absorbing the details like a sponge. "What's more, I did some digging and found that one of the suppliers just so happens to be owned by Ethan Marks' uncle." A pulse of excitement surged through Jensen, farming the embers of a case that had felt dormant. With renewed vigor, she and Jacobs immediately began calling in the necessary people. This connection could drag Ethan back into the spotlight, pulling the strands of the case tighter. If he had indeed returned to Willow Creek under any pretenses, they'd capitalize on the situation. In the following hours, they combed through security footage from the art supply store and canvassed the area for potential witnesses. Each thread was dynamically linked, transforming the perspectives they had gathered until now. Something was indeed brewing, a fresh lead on the horizon that could finally bring closure. As dusk descended over Willow Creek, shadows lengthened, imbued with fresh determination. The townsfolk, buried beneath a shroud of mistrust, began to sense the tide turning. Jensen could taste it, the sweet tinge of justice felt closer than it had in weeks. An undercurrent of excitement coursed through her veins. Finally, they were moving forward. The community's blanket of fear was beginning to lift as they all waited with bated breath for the truth to emerge from the darkness. The suspect, with a newfound sense of purpose. Detective Sarah Jensen wasted no time in diving deeper into Ethan Marks' life. She had learned that the once promising young poet had returned to Willow Creek ostensibly for a brief visit. But the timing struck her as too coincidental. The connection between the art supply store and the letter found in Anna's hand led to a slew of questions that begged for answers. After establishing a solid timeline, Jensen tracked down Ethan at his uncle's home. The morning air was crisp as she approached the modest house, her heart clenching in anticipation. She knocked firmly, each rap echoing in the silence, until a disheveled Ethan opened the door, surprise flickering across his features. "Detective, what's this about?" he stammered, attempting to remain stoic. As she stepped inside, Jensen couldn't help but observe the youthful face of a man who seemed burdened. He wore the remnants of ambition. A half-finished manuscript lay on a cluttered table. But there was also an unmistakable tension simmering just beneath the surface. "Can I ask you about that note?" Jensen began, watching him closely. The way his eyes shifted, the way his posture gradually sagged, signals she had learned to recognize over years of experience. Ethan's initial calm began to crack. "You didn't know about any note?" "I was visiting an old friend," he replied. But the deepening creases on his forehead suggested another narrative marinated just beneath his responses. Jensen pressed further, questions ricocheting through the air. Had he seen Anna recently? What was their relationship like? Each answer drawn from him felt rehearsed, too well structured. But the more she pressed, the more Ethan's discomfort bubbled to the surface. When she inquired specifically about his time at the art supply store, his face paled. "My uncle owns that place," he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. "But I didn't think, and you were in town just days before Anna was found," Jensen interrupted, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. Beneath the soft-spoken exterior, she detected a maelstrom of anxiety. "I didn't do anything," Ethan burst, suddenly defensive. "We were friends, nothing more. This is insane." The tension was palpable. Jensen could see the walls closing in, yet in Ethan's eyes, there was a flicker of something elsy fear that spiraled far beyond paranoia. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "We can find the truth together, Ethan. For Anna." That moment hung suspended in the air, a fragile balance between desperation and clarity. In his expression, she caught a glimpse of vulnerability, intertwined with something sinister. Would he crack under the pressure? Or had he unwittingly stumbled into an unknown connection to the crime? The questions lingered as visions of a once bright future began to shatter around them, revealing a deeper, darker mental landscape. Ethan Marks was now their primary suspect, a thread that could unravel much more than a simple murder case. The trial. The morning of the trial dawned with an air heavy with anticipation, and the quaint town of Willow Creek buzzed with whispers of discontent and curiosity. The small courthouse, typically a backdrop for routine matters, had been transformed into the epicenter of tension as townspeople filed in, eager to witness the proceedings of Ethan Marks, now accused of murdering beloved schoolteacher Anna Caldwell. As Detective Sarah Jensen took her seat among the spectators, she felt the weight of the case settle heavily on her shoulders. Ethan, once a bright young man known for his poetry and charisma, seemed a mere shadow of his former self, pallid and strained. The evidence presented would hinge on the connections drawn from floundering memories, desperate truths, and fractured lives. The courtroom buzzed. A mix of spectators and media gathered, their murmurs swirling through the air like the smoke from a nearby chimney. The gavel struck with precision, pulling everyone back into the moment as the judge addressed the room, setting the tone for the weighty proceedings that would determine both guilt and innocence. During the prosecutor's opening statement, Anna's life was lovingly narrated, her dedication to education, her compassion for others, and ultimately, the tragedy of her untimely death. The room filled with emotion, tears glistening in the eyes of those who had loved and lost her. Witness testimonies laid the groundwork, piecing together Ethan's connection to Anna, revealing a friendship that had spiraled into obsession. Then came the defense, who painted a different image of Ethan, a misunderstood youth, overwhelmed by the pressures of life and the expectations of returning to a town that had once cradled him in familiarity. They argued that while Ethan might have harbored feelings for Anna, love didn't equate to violence. As the days unfolded, the trial morphed into a spectacle of blame and speculation, with various character witnesses stepping forth in layers, revealing the cracks in the facade of a perfect town. Ethan himself took the stand, his voice trembling as he recounted meeting Anna, but ultimately steering clear of the day leading to her death. But under precision cross-examination, cracks soon appeared. The torn note emerged prominently during testimony, connected back to the art supply store and Ethan's prior visits. The glances exchanged between Ethan and the prosecutor spoke volumes. The impact was palpable. Each claim seemed to haunt them both, as remnants of their shared history dissected the emotional tapestry woven around them. As the trial drew towards its closing arguments, Jensen prepared herself for whatever outcome lay ahead. What began as a peaceful town had transformed, nerves taut among families, friends, and foes alike. In this packed courtroom, the air thrummed with an anxiety that transcended the trial itself. When the judge finally instructed the jury to deliberate, a hush fell over the room. Faces contorted with concern and anticipation, And for a fleeting moment, the weight of the community felt like an anchor on everyone's soul. Justice, whatever form it might take, impended, and the lives of those present would change irrevocably, tethered to the verdict that loomed ever closer. The aftermath. The verdict came in the late afternoon, the sun dipping low in the sky, casting long shadows across the court. As the jury filed in, Detective Sarah Jensen sat at the edge of her seat, her heart pounding like the steady beat of a funeral drum. The mood was electric with tension. The weight of an entire community turned on a single moment. Do you find the defendant, Ethan Marks, guilty or not guilty of the charges of murder? The foreperson's voice rang clear. The single word that followed would seal hearts, alter lives, and fracture a town already steeped in grief. As the word guilty fell into the stillness, a palpable gasp rippled through the gallery. Ethereal heartbreak mingled with the cacophony of emotion. Some wept softly, while others remained still as statues, disbelief etched into their features. For Detective Jensen, the moment felt bittersweet. Justice had been served, but at what cost? Ethan's expression crumpled. The vibrant spirit transformed into a mask of despair. Years of unfulfilled potential and dreams kept spiraling away from him, each passing second heavy with the knowledge of never returning to the life he once knew. The further consequences were just beginning to unfold. As the weeks trickled into months, the fallout set in like thick fog. Willow Creek transitioned into a rifled version of itself, a town burdened by the knowledge that trust had dissolved in layers. Friends fell out with neighbors as whispers of secrets and suspicions deepened the divide. The quiet law of village life had shattered. Fear clawed at the heart of the community. For Jensen, the reality of the case left wounds that wouldn't heal easily. She immersed herself in her work, yet the echo of Anna Caldwell's absence haunted her every day. Conversations with her family about justice felt like echoes of hollow victories. Anna's classroom moments, vibrant with laughter, stood silent. School assemblies were held in her memory, but they only served as stark reminders of the love and light lost to tragedy. In the months that followed, support group was formed for those touched by the events that had unraveled their reality. Here, conversations bloomed, revealing sorrows faced by families as they wrestled with their feelings of betrayal and loss. Jensen attended regularly, yearning not just to support the community, but to seek clarity for herself. Shedding the emotional debris felt necessary, albeit convoluted. Despite the fracture, slowly, tendrils of unity began to weave back into the fabric of the town. With each meeting and heartfelt sharing, healing started to take root, albeit at a painstaking pace. Willow Creek slowly recognized that while they could not undo what had been broken, they could build from the remnants. Honor Anna's memory, not by clinging to grief, but by nurturing the compassion she had embodied. In the end, Willow Creek was forever altered not merely by the tragedy that unfolded, but by the choices made in its wake. Detective Jensen stood among them, resolute in her belief that truth may sometimes come at a high cost, yet it also had the power to restore hope. As she gazed upon the familiar spaces of her town, she imagined a time when the light of Anna's laughter could once again fill those empty classrooms and hearts. The journey toward healing had begun, a testament that even in the wake of darkness, there can be a path toward the light. Reflection. As the seasons unfurled in Willow Creek, Detective Sarah Jensen found herself traversing the winding path of reflection. The initial excitement of solving a case had shifted into a quieter, heavier introspection. Each day, she passed through the streets, buzzing with new energy. But among the chatter, she felt the same pall of mourning over the town, like an otherwise vibrant painting rendered monochrome. In the tranquil moments before dawn, she often drove to Birchwood Park, the site of Anna's tragic end. The woods stood sentinel, a living memorial against the backdrop of untouched earth. More than once, she found herself lost in thought, tracing back every opportunity they had missed, each clue they had overlooked. Had the community known more than they let on? Was their guilt mingling with their grief? Anna's spirit lingered in the stories shared at the support group meetings, resonating with the heart of Willow Creek. As she listened to families speak, sharing their fragments of sorrow and loss, Jensen realized that justice was not just about the verdict. It was about compassion, understanding, and healing as a community. In her heart, the sadness transformed into resolve. She penned down her thoughts during quiet nights of reflection on the fragility of trust and the power of connection among humanity. Perhaps through sharing these experiences, they could prevent another tragedy, bridging the fragile line between safety and vulnerability. In time, she hoped Willow Creek would reclaim its spirit, a brighter tapestry woven with the threads of remembrance, unity, and love.